Hello everyone, welcome back to the IELTS online series and day 6 of the writing section. And in this class, we'll be talking about the next question type, which is a pie chart, and also another question type, which is a table graph. Apart from that, if you're starting from this class, please make sure that you have already seen the previous videos, because in this class we will be directly following the steps that we have already discussed in the day 4 of this series, where I also started the writing section, right? So in that class I talked about the approach to academic task 1, and hence please make sure that at least you have watched the day 4 of this series to be watching this video for better understanding. All right, let us begin. So we'll be looking at the pie chart question, and this is a sample for the pie chart academic task 1 question of the IELTS writing section. Now, as we know, the first thing that we're going to do is look at the question and try to understand the context of the question. So the pie charts below show the comparison of different kinds of energy production of France in 2 years. So this figure is about different sources of energy of one country, that is France, and for two different points of time. So the two different point of times are 1995 and 2005. And the five different kinds of energy production are coal, gas, other nuclear, and petrol. So you should be able to do this before you write your essay. And now let us start making notes. So whenever you are making notes, please make sure that you are rephrasing the question. You don't have to do it on paper, you can also do it on your brain, but for the sake of this class, I'll be rephrasing the question that has been given here while making notes as itself. So proportion of different sources of energy for two different years, right? So that is what has been given in the pie charts. Apart from that, we can also see that the key elements are five sources, which are coal, gas, others, nuclear, and petrol. We also have 2 points of time, which is 1995 and 2005. And the data has been given in percentage. Yes. Now, this is the information that we must know, and this is something that you can know while looking at the figure. And this is the information that we're also going to use while writing our introduction part of the essay. Apart from that, the next step in this question is to be able to identify if this is a figure which is based on a point of time or a period of time. Now, as we can see, there are 2 points of time. So we also have points of time and we also have period of time. So we can talk in this question from both the highest and least data points perspective, and we can also talk from the perspective of increasing and decreasing trends, right? So now let us make notes for that. All right, now in this case, if we see in the year 1995 and in 2005, coal and gas both had the highest proportion, right? And similar proportion in both the years, whereas let's say others has the least proportion in both the years, right? So least proportion of energy production was from coal and gas in the year 1995 and 2005, and the least production was of others, right? Now, the reason I'm taking both coal and gas is because there's not much difference between the data points, right? 29.63 and 29.80, it's a very least percentage of difference, and hence approximately we can say that both of these sources of energy have produced the same amount of almost same amount of energy, right? Now, after which we can also look at the increasing and decreasing trends, right? Now, in this case, what we can see is gas has also increased coal has also increased by a marginal amount, but it has. Others has also increased. Nuclear has also increased, while petro is the only one which has decreased, right? Now, in this case, we are, while also looking at the increasing and decreasing trends, we are also going to group key components on the basis of similar trends, right? So here for gas, coal, nuclear, and others, it has increased, while for petro it has decreased. Now there is one another strategy of grouping information which is on the basis of data. Now another way that you can use to categorize this information is in gas and coal there is a change of around 1%, right? So data benchmarking gore we can group our information as well, whereas for others, nuclear and petro, the change, I'm not talking about increase or decrease, but I'm talking about change, and the change is around more than 5%, right? So on the basis of data also you can group information. Now in this case, this is also a correct way and this is also a correct way. Both of them should be fine for you to group information. Now this was all about making notes for this question, and let us move on to writing the introduction for this question. Now, as we have identified the type of diagram, we have also um, paraphrased the question, and we know that we cannot copy more than two consecutive words from the question, right? So you don't need to change the major keywords, right? So the major keywords are energy production. So I have not copied more than two consecutive words from the question, because if you write kinds of energy production, that becomes imitation of more than two consecutive words. But you can use a synonym for non-major keywords such as kinds, different, comparison, and so on, right? In France, so the country name and the points of time. Along with that, I have also mentioned the energy sources, which are this and this. So this was all about our introduction, and you should be able to at least do this in your essay as well. Looking at the overview for this question, so we just made notes that that the co that the co that gas and coal both have the highest production in both the years, whereas others has the least. Apart from that, there is a very marginal change in the production of these sources in a period of 10 years, right? So I have mentioned that in my overview. Overall, only a marginal change is observed in the production of the given sectors over the duration of 10 years. Moreover, gas and coal were the most prominent sources of energy, while the least production was of others for both the given years, 1995 and 2005. Now, here, I'm not using any data, but I'm just giving an overall summary of the major highlights that I can see in this figure. Moving on to writing the body paragraph for this question, we know that we always start the body paragraph with a topic statement, right? So in both years, gas and coal were the most produced energy sources and grew marginally over the period. Now, as we just discussed, we made a note by grouping information, similar information, and I mentioned two ways of grouping information. The first one was on the basis of similar trends, which was increasing or decreasing trend, and the second one was by benchmarking data, right? So we are going to write our body paragraphs and divide the content by following the second way of grouping information, which was by benchmarking data. Now, in this case, for the first paragraph, I'll be talking about those sources of energy which changed by only 1%. And in the second paragraph, I'll be talking about the remaining sources of energy which changed by more than 5% approximately. So now I'm going to present data and show that how has these sources of energy changed marginally. So in the year 1995, a little less than 30% of coal and gas were generated. This figure then rose by around a percent, reaching to 30.31% and 30.39% respectively in 2005. Now you should be able to see that my topic statement is being justified by the data that I have just elaborated in my body paragraph, right? And that is the entire concept of writing a topic statement. You are basically summarizing whatever you are going to write in your paragraph. Moving on to the second body paragraph, again we start with a topic statement. The remaining energy sources changed by more than 5% over a decade. In the year 1995, others and nuclear sources was were at 4.90% and 6.40%, which rose to 9.10% and 10.10% in 2005. In contrary to this growth, a decrease of almost 10% is observed in the petrol's production starting from this to this, right? Now, please make a note of the marker that I'm using here to show a difference in trend, and this also shows that you are comparing between the major key components of the question. All right. Now, this was all about doing the essay for a pie chart kind of question. Obviously, in this case, we only have two pie charts, but you can have up to 6 to 8 pie charts. So please make sure that you're trying to group information, you're trying to note the major highlights of the question, and then elaborating those highlights by using data in your body paragraphs appropriately. I hope that this is clear. Let us look at the table chart question for academic task 1. This is a sample for the table chart question, and the first thing that we are going to do again is make notes. Before that, let us try to read the question and understand the context of the question. Now, here, as we can see, the table below shows information and prediction regarding the change in percentage of the population age 65 and above in 3 countries. So, the data that has been given here is basically about the percentage of old people of the population of these 3 countries, and the data has been given for 3 different years, which is 1988, 2000, and 2030. So now let us quickly start taking notes for this question as well. The first thing is it's a table diagram, right? Then let us rephrase the question, and because the information has been given in percentage and we also have predictions, meaning forecast or an expected percentage of people has also been given in the table, so you must also note such kind of future data if that has been given in the question. So basically, if we paraphrase, the table shows percentage of people who are aged 65 and above. So this could be one way of paraphrasing the question in your own words, in your own language. Then we are going to note down the key components. So the key components are 3 countries, which are Canada, Germany, and UK. And 3 points of time, which are 1988, 2000, and 2030. So these are the key components for this question. After we are done with this, we are also going to see that the information has been given in percentage, even though it's not been mentioned here, it's been mentioned here. So the unit of measurement or the information, the data has been presented in percentage. Now, after we are done doing this, we are going to look, because we have points of time, or let's say we have multiple points of time, right? So we can look at this figure from both the perspective, which is also from an increasing or a decreasing trend. Yes. As well, we can also look at it from the perspective of noticing out highest or least data points. So let us do that for this question. So now we are going to see how has the data increased over time, because there are multiple points of time, or decreased or changed. And at the same time, in the same year, which country has the highest population of old age people, and which has the lowest in a single point of time, right? So let us do that now. All right. Now, in this case, in the year 1988, in fact, in all the 3 years, Germany has the highest population and UK has the least, right? Apart from that, if you look at the trend, we have to make a segregation here because we know that 1988 and 2000 are past data years, whereas 2030 is a future point of time. So we should make a segregation here, and we can see that in all three countries, there is an increasing trend, right? So there is an increasing trend. A noticeable feature can be that while UK and Canada has increased by an approximate percentage of 5 in sorry while Canada and Germany has increased by 5 percentage, UK has increased by a very marginal percentage of people, right? So that is why you can mention that as well by saying that, by grouping Canada and Germany together and saying that UK has a very marginal increase, right? Apart from that, in 2030 as well, this number is expected to grow. So this was about, looking at this question from both highest and least perspectives at the same time. Also from the perspective of, how the data has changed over time. So we can talk about it from both increasing and decreasing trends and also highest and least data points. Now, if we have to group the information, so the grouping that we can do is, in this case, again, there are two ways you can group information. You can talk about 1988 and 2000 for all three countries in the first paragraph, and in the second paragraph we can talk about 2030, the data points for 2030 for all three countries, right? This is one way of doing it, and the second way would be to talk about Canada and Germany in the first paragraph, because they do seem to follow a trend where a similar percentage of growth has been seen, while UK seems a different trend. And for all 3 years, and in the second paragraph, you can talk about UK for all 3 years, right? So these are the ways of grouping your ideas on the basis of similar trends that is being witnessed in the figure, right? So we are doing this all of it before we are starting to write our essay, because this gives us a lot of insight as to what to write in our essays. So now let us look at the introduction for this question. So, as you can see, we have mentioned the name of the diagram, we have mentioned a verb, then we have paraphrased the question, percentage of the number of people who are age 65 and above in three countries, which are Canada, UK, and Germany. The old age proportion for the years 1988 and 2000, along with the future prediction of these figures for 2030 is given in the table. Now it is very important for you to mention the prediction part, because if you don't, you are giving an incomplete information to the reader. Whenever you're writing the essay, please make sure that you're writing it from the perspective that the reader is not going to have access to the question. And if they do not have the access to the question, how should you present your information such that they get complete and accurate information, right? So that's why whenever a future data has been given in the question, please make sure that you are mentioning that very clearly. All right. Looking at the overview for this question, we just took notes from this question from both highest and least perspectives and increasing and decreasing trends. So let us see how to write the overview for this question. Overall, both Germany and Canada witnessed growth in the number of people age 65 and above from 1998 to 2000, whereas UK saw a marginal increase in its old aged population, right? So this was also a point that we noted. Nevertheless, of the differences, these figures of all three countries are expected to grow approximately by 5% by 2030. So I'm also doing data benchmarking here. And on the basis of that data, also I have grouped my information. So here in these two statements, I talked about how the data has changed over time. Now I'm also talking about, moreover, Canada has the highest proportion of old people, while UK has the least throughout the mentioned time period. So I'm also talking about the highest and least data points for these countries in these 3 years, right? So that is how you can write your overview. Moving on to the body paragraph, start your body paragraph with a topic statement. In this case, I have not mentioned a topic statement because I'm anyway going to meet the word count, but it's always good to start your essay with a topic statement. In the year 1988, Canada hosted people who were age 65 and have adjust above 16.32%, which increased to 20.6% in the year 2000. A similar increase was witnessed in Germany, which also hosts the highest proportion of old age people, ranging from 20.45% to 25.32%, whereas in the UK, there were only around 40% of people at 65 and above in both years. So now, as you can see in the first paragraph, I have grouped on the basis of the past years, right? So in the first paragraph, I'm talking about the past years, which is 1988 and 2000, and the data for all three countries in these years, right? So that is how I've mentioned information in paragraph 1. In paragraph 2, now I'm just going to talk about the year 2030. In the year 2030, the forecast for the population of these people shows an increase in their numbers. Germany is expected to have the highest number of people aged 65 and above at 30.42%, followed by Canada with an old age proportion of 26.35% and a least percentage of 20.35% is expected in the UK, right? So now this is how you can group information and mention and provide your data points in your body paragraph. Now that was all about the table graph question. Now there are a few things that I want to discuss in this class, which is we discussed about the task assessment criteria in the last class, where one of the very important criteria was grammatical range and accuracy, where sentence structure is a very important part of grammatical range and accuracy as well. Now in that case, how can you actually display multiple sentence structures, right? So for example, I have few statements here which can display how can you play with sentence structures in your essay. So for example, this is one of the structures that you can use while writing your statements, which is noun phrase plus verb plus adverb. So the statement goes as the employment rate rose rapidly, right? So I'm using this the structure number 1. Now I can say the same thing by using a different structure, which is there is r plus noun phrase. For example, for statement number 1, how would I write it in a different manner is there was a rise in employment, or there was a rapid rise in employment, right? So you don't need to repeat the same structure over and over, but you can choose to play between these structures. Again, for example number 2, the cost of living fell dramatically. So there has been an increase in the cost of living, or there has been a fall in the cost of living, right? So you can play between sentence structures to show GRA in your writing. Now, for approximations in the slides that will follow, we are going to see a lot of synonyms for the words that we use a lot in our essay, especially in academic task 1. So for approximation, you can use these words. Don't use the word approximately all the time, especially because the figures are not exact. And don't spend a lot of time to figure out exactly what is the data point that the figure is trying to show. So you can always use these words and mention your data points. We do tend to use a lot of words that show trends. So for example, increase. So depending on what kind of structure you are using, you can choose to use various kind of synonyms for these words. If you are using a structure where noun form structure, you can use a rise and increase and upward trend and so on and so on. So we have a lot of slides and a lot of such synonyms, so you can obviously pause and look at these synonyms that I have mentioned here for different kind of trends and change that you see in a statistical diagram figure, right? And here are some more vocabulary for approximations, some more vocabulary for showing increase or decrease or change, along with some rephrases. But again, do not use these rephrases all the time in your essay. It should be a balanced combination of using numbers and these rephrases whenever you are writing your essay in the IELTS exam, right? For example, if there is a 2% change, instead of saying 2%, you can say a tiny proportion or a very small proportion. But probably in the second statement, where you're again mentioning about data, you should use the data point, right? So do not make it seem very jargon based, but use an appropriate combination of these words. All right, so that should be it for today's class. And in next class, we will be dealing with the next question type, which is a multiple figure based question. And along with that, we'll also look at the diagram and map based question type. And I think after which you will be good to go to take the IELTS Academic Task 1 writing exam. All right, thank you guys. I'll see you guys in next class.